In the automotive landscape, some vehicles transcend their function to become true icons. The Lincoln Town Car is undoubtedly one of them. Beyond being a simple means of transportation, this American giant embodied luxury, elegance, and a unique understanding of opulence on wheels. From its origins on the streets of the post-war period to its reign as a status symbol in the 1990s, the Town Car left an indelible mark. Welcome to a new video. Join us for a journey through the fascinating history of a car that, for many, represented the quintessence of the American dream. If you enjoy this type of content, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Now, let's begin. The arrival of a symbol. That's right, folks, the Lincoln Town Car. Only Michael Jackson owned a car like this. And only the lucky ones. In the memorable 1990s, the Lincoln Town Car became one of the symbols of American luxury on the roads of the post-Soviet space. And it was a materialized image of Hollywood cinema, rapidly gaining popularity. Huge, predominantly black, gleaming with chrome, and with the roar of a purebred V8, it stood out markedly from anything imported from Europe. Despite its lower price compared to its competitors from BMW or Mercedes, the Town Car definitely didn't look cheap. And how could a car look cheap that the world's powerful constantly moved around in on movie screens? Origins of the name Town Car. This automobile is truly iconic. It's no secret that the direct predecessors of automobiles were horse-drawn carriages or coaches. Those who were more humble had simpler carriages, and the wealthier had more ostentatious coaches. What united them was the fact that the passengers sat inside a closed body, and the coachmen sat outside, in what was called the mails, that is, on an unprotected bench, exposed to all the winds and other unpleasant weather phenomena. This concept was the basis for one of the many early automobile bodies, called DeVille in Europe and Town in America. The presence of the word town in both terms hinted that these cars, in which the coachman, i.e., the chauffeur, sat in an open compartment, and the passengers in a closed one, were primarily intended for short trips around town. DeVille and Town cars were some of the most prestigious and expensive car body styles, designed to convey the high status of their owners, who, of course, were the ones sitting inside, not outside. In the 1920s, Town cars began to incorporate pop-up windows in the front doors and removable or folding roofs over the driver, providing much greater comfort than previous versions. By the late 1930s, these body styles had virtually disappeared, but the terms weren't lost. This is where the names of Cadillac's DeVille and Lincoln's Town cars, to which this video is dedicated, come from. The evolution towards an independent model. The Town Car only became a completely independent model within the product line of Ford Motor Company's flagship division in 1981. Before that, the phrase was used to designate the top-of-the-line versions of Continental sedans. Nothing new, really. Americans have always had an unhealthy tendency toward confusion in nomenclature. Sometimes a package name would be revived as a standalone car. Other times, iconic names would be attached to an ideologically completely different car. And sometimes, even the name of an engine would become an entire position in the model range. In the early 1980s, Lincoln management decided to somewhat organize its nomenclature after the discontinuation of the Versailles model. As a result, the Continental and the Continental Town Car were merged into a single model, the Town Car, available in both 4- and 2-door body styles, with the Mark VI occupying a higher position in the company's hierarchy. Already in 1982, however, Lincoln returned to its old ways and reorganized the model range. The Continental sedan returned to the lineup with a slightly more modern design, but, more importantly, with a significantly reduced size thanks to the use of the Fox body architecture. And in 1983, the all-new Lincoln Mark VII debuted with an even more modern exterior design, also built on the Fox platform, and, like the new Continental, classified in the mid-size segment with a body length of just over 5 meters. The only full-size Lincoln was, therefore, the Town Car, which used the Panther architecture, the same one that, several years later, gave life to the legendary Victoria, becoming the brand's new flagship model. The Town Car also became its most conservative model in terms of design. With a body length of 5 meters and 57 centimeters, the Town Car, now available only in a 4-door version, was still enormous, albeit much shorter than the Continental of the late 1970s. At the same time, it was almost half a ton lighter, weighing approximately 1850 kg, depending on the equipment. All this should have been reflected in maneuverability and fuel efficiency. If it makes any sense to talk about these categories in the context of a huge suitcase with a string frame chassis, created in the United States almost half a century ago. Traditionally for the United States in the first half of the 1980s, the town car's engine situation was sad. The massive 460 and 400 cubic inch Vates, 7.5 and 6.6 liters, respectively, were gone. The massive sedan received a 302 cubic inch, or 5-liter, according to the European measurement system, Vate under the hood, with no alternative. Initially, this engine was powered by a carburetor system and had 130 horsepower, and in 1986, thanks to the advent of multi-point electronic fuel injection, engine power increased to 150 horsepower. All this power was combined with a sluggish 4-speed automatic transmission. The car accelerated slowly to 100 km/h, 62 mph, but it still did. And if you kept your foot on the accelerator for a minute or two longer, you could reach a top speed of 175 km/h, 109 mph. In short, as Rolls-Royce liked to say, there was just enough power to get the car moving. First-generation interior design and luxury in terms of exterior design, the town car didn't deviate much from its 1970s Continental ancestors. The blank front end with hidden headlights was gone, but the headlights themselves became rectangular, in keeping with the fashion trends of the time. Unlike the Continental and Mark VII models, the town car's rear didn't feature the spare tire recess, which had long been a distinctive feature of Lincoln cars. And again, unlike the aforementioned models, the town car always came with a vinyl top, which could cover it completely or only up to the center pillar. The latter option was more popular among those who used the services of a chauffeur, as the rear passenger compartment was visually separated from the front driver's compartment. In other words, it was almost like the original town cars of the Roaring '20s. However, the interior, with all the corresponding status options, remained at the same premium level. Among the highlights was the optional digital instrument cluster, with an onboard computer that monitored many of the car's parameters, including the mileage remaining on the tank. The patented secure code system allowed keyless entry to the cabin using a numeric combination on the door. As part of the 1985 update, the town car became the first model in the group with an optional CD player, which played through a 12-speaker JBL audio system. The variety of interior trim materials was also extensive. Various combinations of leather and wood, along with chrome elements, allowed for truly customizable interiors at the dealership. The advertising battle, Lincoln versus Cadillac, the marketing competition between Lincoln and Cadillac for consumers, was notable. In the mid-1980s, General Motors heavily relied on front-wheel drive, downsizing, modern design, and badge engineering, which led to many models from different GM brands looking very similar. This is how, for example, a cheap Chevrolet Celebrity looked. And so was the expensive Cadillac DeVille. This fact was a topic of discussion throughout the American automotive press. Lincoln marketers attempted to ridicule this in one of their town car commercials. Lincoln's idea of what a luxury car should be, on the one hand, justified the town car's excessively conservative design, which was obvious. On the other hand, where did Lincoln go wrong? Bio-design wasn't yet fashionable, and the 1970s, with their 6-meter battleships, didn't yet seem like a thing of the past. Cadillac, by the way, didn't let Lincoln's provocation go unanswered and launched its own ad, pointing out to competitors and viewers that the town car wasn't the largest car on the American market, although it wasn't very convincing. Be that as it may, by remaining faithful to traditional American values, the frame, rear-wheel drive, large size, and conservative design, Lincoln made no mistake. Starting with a modest 33,000 sedans produced in 1981, town car production increased to nearly 120,000 in 1985, and in 1988, it surpassed the 200,000 mark. The DeVille sedan, in its most successful year, 1985, barely reached the 150,000-unit mark. In total, more than 850,000 town cars rolled out of Ford's Wixom plants, including nearly 5,000 coupe-bodied units produced in 1981. The Limo King and the second generation. A significant boost to sales came from corporate fleets, which purchased not only town car sedans but also limousines in large quantities, built only by third-party companies certified by Ford. Lincoln did not manufacture limousines itself, however. The company offered so-called limo assembly packages, designated by the factory code 418. These included a reinforced suspension, additional engine and transmission coolers, a more powerful generator and battery, and extended wiring harnesses, which significantly facilitated the connection of electronics. Chassis lengthening beams, available in 4 standard lengths from 70 to 120 inches, and additional body elements were also offered. Thanks to the 418 package, the simple frame construction, and an engine that, while not powerful, was extremely reliable, the town car proved to be the ideal choice for limousine conversions, especially beginning in the second half of the 1980s, when the Cadillac DeVille switched to front-wheel drive. This trend continued with the second generation of the town car, which debuted for the 1990 model year. The second generation of the town car was literally born with difficulty. Existing developments in the context of a full-size sedan no longer corresponded to modern realities, both technically and in terms of design. The echoes of the oil crisis, along with increasingly stringent environmental regulations, had become a familiar scenario for the entire American automotive industry. Added to this were European and Japanese manufacturers, whose desire for the new market grew every year, and the seemingly routine task for a behemoth like Ford Motor Company updating its flagship model no longer seemed so simple. And then, there was still Cadillac, which continued to enjoy fairly stable demand. Initially, 2 paths were considered for the model's future development: limiting it to cosmetic changes, maintaining the basic structure, or moving to a front-wheel drive layout with a European-oriented look. The second path had already been developed for the 8th-generation Continental, which was released under the 1988 model year designation, becoming the brand's first front-wheel drive car. However, for the second-generation town car, the first path was chosen: maintaining the existing rear-wheel drive architecture, large dimensions and exterior individuality, which had to fit into the new automotive reality, both in terms of design language and consumer qualities, one of the most important being, as before, fuel efficiency. Second-generation innovation and success. Ultimately, under the direction of lead designer Gail Halderman, the overall body style was developed, but the actual design of the car was entrusted to the British firm International Automotive Design of Worthing. The designers did an excellent job. They created almost a benchmark of the full-size American sedan of the 1990s. Massive, over 5.5 meters long, with a clear division between the hood, passenger compartment, and trunk. At the same time, the drag coefficient, CX, was radically reduced from 0.46 in the previous model to 0.36, which inevitably affected fuel efficiency. Yes, the car looked a bit dusty compared to the Mark 8, launched in 1993, which impressed with its futurism. However, the Mark 8 screamed its sporty and innovative character, which would hardly have been appropriate for the town car. The narrow, long headlight cluster, the distinctive radiator grille, and the recognizable taillight assembly, along with the smooth yet sharp body lines, left no doubt as to what was being seen. The new town car became the pinnacle of the Lincoln model lineup. The interior was first class on the one hand, on the other, it offered no great revelations. It featured electric drives for everything that could be electrified, extensive leather and wood upholstery, a digital instrument cluster that was fashionable at the time, a mobile phone that appeared in 1995, and all kinds of lighting that added comfort and exclusivity. The options list for the town car, as before, was enormous. The seriously modernized rear-wheel drive Panther platform received the FN36 index and was equipped with rear air suspension as standard. The engine remained unchanged, a 5-liter V8 with an overhead camshaft and a 4-speed automatic transmission. The town car debuted with this configuration for the 1990 model year. However, in 1991, the archaic and limited small block was replaced by a completely new 4.6-liter V8 with a single overhead camshaft, producing 190 horsepower. The version with two separate exhaust outlets developed 210 horsepower. The transmission gained electronic control. In 1990, Motor Trend magazine named the Town Car of the Year, which significantly boosted sales of the model, which reached close to 150,000 units. Starting the following year, sales began to slowly decline, but still exceeded 100,000 units annually. Total production of the second-generation Town Car exceeded 900,000 units over 8 years of production. And if Forbes magazine is to be believed, each car sold generated a profit of $10,000 for the manufacturer. That's over $1 billion a year. The third generation and the farewell to the Town Car in 1997. At the New York Auto Show, the third generation of the Town Car was presented. At first glance, it might seem that the stylists had simply applied a generous touch of bio-design to the previous generation and adapted it to the new corporate style. However, in reality, everything was much more interesting. Focusing on the chassis, throughout the model's production run, the frame was improved to increase torsional rigidity. It even went so far as to use hydroforming technology for its production starting in 2003, which allowed the structure's weight to remain constant while significantly increasing rigidity. The rear suspension incorporated a Watts mechanism, which added some benefits to high-speed handling while maintaining the characteristic smooth ride. The brakes were also improved. For example, the front mechanisms became dual piston, and the larger diameter of the brake discs necessitated the transition to 16-inch wheels. Furthermore, the kinematics of the front suspension arms were also revised, with the lower ones being made of aluminum. And while all of the above seems commonplace today, even in the mid-90s, implementing all these innovations took some effort from Ford, in the form of the same suitcase with a frame, which, although shortened slightly, was widened in the other two dimensions. As for the powertrain, everything remained more or less the same in the third generation. The power of the 4.6-liter V8 increased to 239 horsepower in the top-of-the-line version, thanks, among other things, to the transition to electronic throttle control. Inside, everything remained class-leading, from an American perspective. It's hard to single out anything specific here. Let's move on to sales. The third-generation Town Car proved to be a long-lived model, remaining on the market for 13 model years. However, sales figures consistently maintained negative growth. While in the first year production was 97,500 units, in the last, 2011, it was only 9,500. The last 1,000 units were sold in 2012. The car simply became less and less in demand each year. And the fault lay not with the Japanese Lexus, or even its bitter competitor from General Motors with the badge on the hood. Quite simply, the market changed radically. Those who once preferred a 5-meter coupe for themselves at the wheel, or 6-meter sedans to sit in the right rear seat, suddenly became very interested in a new form factor, luxury SUVs, which allow you to sit both behind the wheel and in the rear, while simultaneously resembling an aircraft carrier among the weak vessels floundering below the waterline. In the same year, 1997, that the third Town Car debuted, the all-new Navigator was released. And apparently, it's not entirely clear why the Town Car model's agony continued to drag on for over a decade, when demand for it plummeted with each passing year. But man, as they say, proposes and God, in the form of Ford Motor Company, disposes. Lincoln buried its last frame sedan, waiting for the moment when moss would grow around it at the dealership, and thus managed to push production of the third generation to 660,000 units. The total number of Town Cars sold during its 31-year existence amounted to 2,419,000 units. An unforgettable legacy. The story of the Lincoln Town Car isn't about following fashion trends or building a product line in the changing realities of the marketplace. However, it is an excellent example of how marketers, engineers, and their leaders worked during a very turbulent time in the American auto industry. What difficulties did they encounter, and what did they achieve? No one, unless they're a true American technology geek, will turn their head today at a passing new Navigator. Well, it passed, and that's it. But a town car of any generation, you'll undoubtedly follow with your eyes and ruefully think, that's how they used to make cars. We've reached the end of this video. Comment in the comments, like the video, subscribe, and activate the bell to enjoy future videos like this one. See you next time.